Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Creation show. I am your host, Rebecca Boswell, and today we have another conversation in this series on love. Now, one thing that seems to run through all of the conversations we've had so far is the sense of, what actually is love? We have this one word that lots of people use for lots of different things, thoughts, feelings, emotions, ways of being, even energies. And yet, what we found is that oftentimes, when we use this word, it doesn't actually point at the thing that we are hoping to connect with or commune with or be a part of or even be able to perceive. So today, we're going to poke at this thing a little bit more with a special guest, Katarina Wallentin, and she is an author, 2 amazing books. We'll have the links in the show notes. So wonderful. And she can talk about those in a little bit. So I'll just tease you for now. Also, facilitator and creator of Magnitude. She's a creative wizard, making films, creating artwork, and creating new possibilities all over the world. So today for our episode, Fear, Love, and Creation, we welcome Katarina. Katarina, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant subject in many ways to talk about love, just because it has so many different connotations and it's a very strangely defined, while yet not defined. People have no idea what it means, but they've decided they know what it means. And in this particular, I know when we looked at this subject, we had a few different ones, but what I really love about this particular one with Fear, Love, and Creation was the title, right? So I would say in this case, love comes in many ways, the need to be loved, like the need. So using your creations or even creating to be loved, or to, or even limiting your creation because you're afraid of not being loved, like all of that. That's why the fear comes in. So fear and love are so connected with creation, because creation can be so many. I mean, you can even create love, you can create fear, of course, like you can do all of that. But if you look at that one thing with how much we alter, limit our creations based on a need to be loved, accepted, liked, all of that. And I know that from personal experience. So this is not something like I can look at when I was much younger, when I was a kid, I created weird stuff, and I created a lot, like even my when I played games where they were strange and like out there. And then the more I kind of fell into this, I wanted other people to like me, the less weird I was willing to be, and the less strange. And in many ways, the more conformed my creations got. So I find that my creations get more and more interesting the less concerned I am of being loved, and the less concern, less fear I have of what people will think about what I create. So that's kind of like where, I mean, it's a basic start. Most people know this, but it's still part of that whole spectrum of love.
Yeah, and there can be all these sneaky places where we don't realize that we're actually governing how we behave, what we choose, based on the ones that are really sneaky, right? Like the ones that we aren't maybe aware of. And it's this beautiful, what you're pointing at, that I'm perceiving this is, the difference of when you are it, when you be it, you can radiate it out, shine it out, create it out into the world. And when you are not acknowledging that you are it, then you're constantly looking to have something reflected back to you, anything to help you maybe have a thought that you might be something. So it's from the outside in or the inside out. And so what you're talking about is when it's from the inside out, and we use inside, but it's just from like the big space of you out, that you are just being.
Well, it's the catch-22 of this particular kind of love. Like if this love is the love of validation, basically, like this kind of love is when you'd like to be validated. So but the catch 22 is when you really need the love validation
Yeah.
and you really are seeking it, people have a hard time giving it to you, and you're going to keep seeking it and seeking it and seeking it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're able to validate your own weirdness and your own will creation, if it comes from the inside, like you say, people tend to really like you, and they tend to actually love you because you are being who you be. So the catch 22 with this is like, what,
Yeah.
when you're seeking it from the outside, you're stuck. You're not
Yeah.
going to get it. But when you find it within yourself, you actually get an abundance of it, but then you don't need it anymore. So it's a very, and
Yeah.
that's when the fear goes away, when you already own it from the inside. Like
Mm.
that's when the fear disappears. The fear can only be there if there's a lack. And
Yes.
again, we're talking about this specific kind of love, like the need of validation, the need of being liked, all
Yeah.
of that particular kind. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're so correct. When it comes from the inside and you be it, everything is drawn to you. But at that point, that doesn't matter anymore,
Yeah.
because you're already having what you're seeking.
Yeah,
Because
it's sort of the conundrum of humanity, or like the irony
yeah,
even of humanity, right? It's that thing of like, I will have it when, I will be happy when,
yeah,
and yet the actual chasing of it is precisely that which keeps you from it, because it's already here. So when you are well, actually, let me back up. So this process, this personal process of yours of living and coming
mm,
to this place of awareness, um, what are some of the highlights that you can kind of tease out for people who are maybe in that process right now of really wanting to have more of that sense of ease with being themselves, with owning their difference, with having the courage to be the expression of themselves in the world, in a place where, sometimes belonging, you feel like you need to, yeah, be more like the people around you.
yeah. And it's funny, it's a great question, and there are many things that I could say that are more about empowering, but I would like to start, since this is about creation, I would like to start in a very different end. I would say that the first step to getting there is to truly acknowledge that you are the one that created the exclusion, and you are the one that created the need for validation. There may be many reasons for that, like childhood reasons, or I was bullied when I was a kid, like all these things that occurred and that you have created something with. Like it's not like you're in a vacuum, but you've created whatever need that you now are functioning from. That means that you can uncreate it.
Mm-hmm.
But the very first step there is to truly acknowledge that you created it. I had to work a lot on really looking at that I was the one creating the sense of exclusion, that I was the one that felt like people didn't like me. It wasn't that they didn't like me, but I was creating that with my point of view and with finding things that supported that point
Yeah.
of view, and by that actually creating that more and more. So, and it's a little bit harsh. That's why there are many other ways. I mean, you can acknowledge yourself and empower, but we have that in so many places. But this particular one for me was a turning point. The
Mm.
turning point was when I was willing, and it came in several steps. It didn't come like at once, but it's been several times when I really been looking at, oh, I am creating that. I'm creating that by that reaction. I am creating that by that choice. I'm creating that by that interpretation of a particular situation. And once you go down that path, that
Mm-hmm.
you feel excluded or you feel like people don't like you,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a snow, it's just like everything just falls after you, because once you go down there, that's your point of view creates your reality, and suddenly
Yeah.
you're on that path to that reality. So you also have to stop it. And it's not about being bad or wrong. It is about the potency of our own creations.
Yeah.
We create everything in our life, so we can also uncreate them. We can choose something different, but it does come from us. And even if somebody is really a bitch, your choice how to deal with that will also create the next step. So it doesn't mean that everyone around you is nice. It just means that you have a choice
Yes.
all the time what to
Yes.
do with things that show up in your life. So that, I think that was one of the main turning points when I stopped being a victim of
Yes.
of things around me and started to look at, okay, what choice do I have here? What would I like to create with this here? What action can I take instead of a reaction, which really is, it changed everything. And it's taken a while. It's not like it just happened, because it's
Yeah.
such a different way of functioning in the world to
Yeah.
do that with your own, like, to really be aware that my choices every day is what's creating the life
Yeah.
I'm living.
And that's something that we talk about, you know, I mean, that's basically what this show is about, right? That choice creates, that every choice that we make, it has a ripple and begins to create whatever next choices become available. And what we choose really, it's like this living our choose your own adventure story. I used to love those
Yeah.
books when I was little. And, it's that thing of, what do you choose here? Do you choose to go into the place of trauma and drama? Do you go to the place of hopelessness? Do you go to the place of I have no possibility here? Do you react, maybe even with something in your physical body? Maybe you just react because of that fear that you have. And then also realizing that there is so much choice that we have available. We may not have choice entirely of what shows up on a day-to-day basis. And when we are willing to, actually allow there to be that space between the input, the reaction, and actually have a response that we're choosing, it may not end up the way we think it will. And yet it's still a different possibility than when we just have the reflex and that, knee-jerk reaction.
And it made me think of this other part of this that, it's the right and wrong side. So
Yeah.
Another part of this, to be able to actually change this, is to really kind of uncreate and destroy or give up, whatever you say in this show, where everywhere you decided what the right of you is, like everything you decided is right about you, kind of like who you decided you should be to be right. This is what I can be to be right. But everything that goes outside that is then wrong. So you can't look at that. And this is such an amazingly, like, nearly ridiculous limitation, but we've all been taught. So everything that comes outside there, you have to kind of avoid looking at. And anytime it comes up, you have to go into this, like, either feeling excluded or not liked, because you've decided it is unlikable because it's outside who you decide. So if I'm allowed to vibrate here, and there's something here that I'm really actually vibrating all the time as, but I've decided this is bad.
Yeah.
Anytime that comes up, I have to have a reaction that I am bad, or somebody making me bad, or whatever. So one of the things that really, really has helped also with everything I create, like business, books, films, like you say, all the things I create, is this really looking at, so what am I making right here that isn't, what am I making wrong here that isn't, but really being willing to see everything as not right and wrong. Has that, if you look at that, just expands the playing field for you. It expands the playing field for you to create you. And again, the fear part, like the fear is, oh my God, there's something here about me that's wrong and bad. I can't look at it. I'm so afraid of it. But that fear, or somebody discovering that bad part of you that you decided is bad, like the fear is somebody discovering that in your creations, you. So that part, giving up everything you decided is wrong about you, everything you decided is right about you, and who would you be?
Yeah, well, because then it's just when I look at this, it's like all the analogies of being in a box, being in your comfort zone. It's basically that preservation where you're like, I have to preserve all of the structure that I've created in order to be safe, to know how to function in my world, for other people to recognize me, to know it's me, right? And then there's this thing out there, and when you were speaking, there are those things that we're so afraid of as being like icky and sticky and judgeable and don't, no, I don't want anyone to know. And then there are also those things where it could be the greatness, right? And I mean, usually it is the greatness, but we think it's icky and sticky and all that. But, it's that greatness too of like, well, what if I was actually to allow myself to see that, perceive that, be that other thing that I'm aware of, and even that sense of being afraid of what success would look like, or whatever word you want to use there. What would me being greater than I've ever been, what would that look like? And what if that blew up my box? What if that blew up all the things that that are me today? And so that really interesting thing when you're talking about good and bad, there are all of these different ways of looking at it where we can actually, the rightness can keep us back, and that which would actually be the greatness can also be a limitation when we're unwilling to look at it.
It was very funny. So I've actually written 3 books, but two of them were 2 children's books that I wrote together with Dane here. And the first one was the Baby Unicorn Manifesto. And that's a book about empowering people to be them, and also empowering people to actually have that sense of self and know that you are worth everything, that you're magic, that you have a value. And it's a very sweet book that way, that seems to really kind of go into people's heart and give them that sense. And after we wrote that, I, for a long time, really did have this like, but I'm not always a unicorn. Like it was so this next book, which is called The Baby Dragon Manifesto, really came out of conversations with Dane where we talked about like, I feel way more like a dragon. I stumble over things. I burn things up mistakenly. I say the wrong things, like I'm not only rainbows. So I wrote the second book, which was about a dragon and how everything goes wrong from the moment he kind of pops out of the egg, and how that is also a gift, a beauty, and a fire that can change the world. So for me, those 2 books are kind of like these 2 sides of where there is no right and wrong. It's just who you be is his gift to the world. And that was really interesting because a lot of people were very, very happy when there was also a dragon book and not just a unicorn book that was out in.
Yeah, well, it's almost like when we talk about like love, belonging, right? Expectations, I don't think you can even have that conversation without talking about expectations. And there is, I think, this thing of like, we are all supposed to be perfect or unicorns or like all the bright and shiny, nice things. And that's, I mean, it's, if you have a paint box and you're only allowing yourself to paint with pink and purple, you're missing out on a lot, right? Like there are all these other wonderful shades that you can create with, and sometimes they get messy, and sometimes you use brown, and sometimes you use that,
And sometimes you are brown.
Exactly.
You're never rainbow colored, like that's okay too. I find talking to children cool that way because they don't really have these set points of views yet. The first book I wrote was called Clara and the Climate Changer. It's also a children's book. It's about this girl who changes the climate with the help of a polar bear. But I wrote that a long time ago. I wrote it just when my daughter was born. And I sent it to a few publishing companies in Sweden. And I got back the funniest refusal letters today, right? But this is quite a while ago. I probably wrote that 12 years ago or something like that. And they wrote, this is way too provocative. Nobody wants to read about this. And this, the book basically suggests that we should be driving cars. We should just drive buses. Like it's kind of like a ride into the change of the climate with the help of animals. But it's so interesting to me today that could be too provocative just that few years ago. Well, today that's like something everybody, it's up on the agenda all the time. But I, at the time, did not have a lot of tools. So when I got all these refusal letters, I just went, okay, well, and I put it in a drawer. like the manuscript, and I didn't really look at it for many, many, many years. And then when my mom was about to die, she had cancer for a few years, so we knew she was going to die. We had a lot of conversations. She, for some reason, brought this book up again. She always had loved it a lot. And she asked me, if maybe I should look at publishing it again. And I found it in Illustrator, and I just and I managed to publish it before she passed away. And it was funny to me because now I had none of that. I had none of the fear or the things what people think. I just, it was just something I created, and the world can do whatever they want with it, get it out there. But there is something with that, like how when we are judged from the outside, take our creations and we put them in a drawer. And that's like from the fear of not being good enough, being wrong, being judged, or really even being wrong in the whole idea. Like maybe that was like a terrible idea. Why would I be doing that? So I would say, I would really ask, if you're listening to this, I would ask, how many creations, and they don't have to look like a book. It can be any idea, any creations that you've had over the course of your life that you've taken, put in a drawer because somebody judged it or told you it wasn't good enough or say it wasn't time for it now. And maybe it's time to revisit those. Maybe it's time for you to look at them again and look at them from this perspective. If no one else point of view mattered, what could this be? What could this create in the world? If you were functioning beyond anybody's judgment, what would you do with this idea? What could you create with it? Because that's where the true magic lays. The true magic comes from when these creations are allowed to function in the space of no judgment. When they're allowed to go beyond that, then they can become something that truly changes the world. Just by a little, sometimes it's just a little ting, sometimes it's huge, but it only comes from that space. It's like a magic space that comes beyond judgment.
And for something that's really undefinable and yet so defined, right, in the world, love.
Yeah.
When you're speaking, for me, that space of non-judgment that you're actually talking about.
Yeah.
If I were to say, "Ooh, that's it. That's love." Like we use the word for all of these things, but like if you actually want to tap into what is it actually? What can we perceive? What can we play with? It's that space, that non-judgment space. So what is so scary about that space? Like, what is it about us as human beings that we are more willing to tap into the fear that keeps us from that, and tap into judgments and tap into the things that actually squeeze away that space, then embrace it or be in it? What's the secret? What's the secret here, Katarina?
I would say that it's like that Marianne Williamson poem, that space, in that space, we're unstoppable. And that's what scares us. It's our light that scares us, not our darkness. Yeah. So I really would say, if you truly function from no judgment of you, which is what we're talking about. Like if you love you, like if you loved you, if we say that love in this case is no judgment. So if you loved you and what you created and your ideas and what you were willing to be, and you had no judgment, the space and what you could create, you would be unstoppable. And that scares us. Because what would that mean? Who would you leave behind? Where would we go? Would we recognize ourselves there? What would happen? So that, and if love is that, then love is also unstoppable. So it all depends on where, where do you put the word? How do you use it for you?
Yeah. And it's, just everything that we be, how we be with people, how we be with our own bodies, how we be in even our mental space, how we be with what we choose to create on all levels, energetic, physically, socially, in our communities, globally.
And even the relationship you create with other people, go into this fear, love,
Yeah.
right? And creation, because when you function from the fear of people not liking you, or the fear of making enemies, or the fear, like all of that, or if you function from you need everybody to love you, independent on who they are, did you just need everyone to love you and otherwise you're going to die? Those positions put you where that's the kind of relationships or relationships that you create with people. You are not going to be able to be you, and you are continuously going to have to judge yourself for everything you do to make sure you don't make enemies, to make sure you are loved.
Yeah.
Like your whole life will be based in judgment, and this
Yeah.
magical space that we talked about will just slip through your fingers.
Yeah, it's not accessible. It's like having this huge matrix of like, okay, I have to find that one sweet spot where I get a check in everybody's, in everybody's box. And yeah, well, good luck if anyone who's trying to, I know I tried to do that for many, many years. I would do it with food. I would do it with, what I was supposed to do in my, like, as my career. I would do, and I'd make these lists and I'd say, like, well, food is an easy example, so I use that one. I'd make these lists and I'd be like, well, according to my blood type, I should eat this, 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 and this. And according to this model, I should eat this, 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 and this. And then according to this, I should eat this, this, and this. And then I'd look and I'd be like, all right, well, if I cross-tabulate, then I cross all these out and cross all these out and these, and then I circle the ones that are in all three boxes, and then I'm like, well, that's the only thing I can eat.
Yeah, you can eat a pea. That's
right.
Like what that's what
right.
And
right. And meanwhile, maybe my actual body is like, I don't like that pea. right. So right. So because none of that had anything to do actually with my body. So and nobody's happy. That's kind of the irony of it, right? Is you think, well, I want to do all these things, and then maybe I'll get it right, and people will like me, and and it'll just be good. And yeah, nobody likes you, most of all yourself, and that's probably what they're picking up on. They just realize, oh, she doesn't like herself, so why should I? And not consciously, but they pick that up. People pick more up than we recognize.
Yeah, and we tend also at those, when we function from there, we tend to find people that also do lists and tick off, and where you have to find another P that only is available to function as a P, and there you are, 2 P's in a pie, whatever
there you go. Oh my gosh. And then that creates all kinds of other things.
So it is so true that like this fear, love, and creation really goes into every area of your life, with your body, with your friends, with your creations when they are something outside you as well. So, and that's it. It is part of what I would say I'm still only at the very beginning of. Like, I feel like, yes, I'm more and more, I have more and more of that of me that I can go there. And I'm still exploring. Like, I'm still exploring what would occur if I had no point of view about anything. What could I create then? Where would I go? What would I prioritize in my life? So it's an adventure to function without that judgment, and to actually function without the need of love, or the need of not, making enemies. So
well, on your website, I love how you talk about you've always been an explorer and always looking for the new frontier, and then this moment of like, oh, there's nothing left, and then realizing, oh wait, there's so much left, when we realize that the edges and the borders of what's possible, when we realize that there's more illusion there than we thought previously. So really, when we're talking about this, it's like that space of judgment-free awareness, that space of kind of going into that softness, and just because it has a softness, it doesn't mean it's weak, right? Like the dragon, right? They can have all kinds of ways of showing up, but like to be able to tap into that is like a new frontier, is sort of this invitation of something that we can really practice to step into more and more.
And the funny part is, I used to study social anthropology, which is really how you view the world, and you put on the glasses of all kinds of different cultures and you view the world like that. And then I worked many years for different international organization. I traveled around the world with the UN. I did all kinds of things where the world kind of, to be able to do that, you could not actually function from total judgment. There was no way that you could do that because the world is so different and
Yeah.
everywhere. Like if I travel with Taliban's in Afghanistan for a few weeks, and it doesn't, it changes your whole way of looking at reality, because you're actually, instead of looking at them as a picture over here as something evil that,
Yeah.
you know, are defined and put into this box called Taliban, you're actually functioning with beings that travel with you, that, you know, eat with you, that suddenly then you're looking at the world in a completely different way, because it's not black and white. It's
Mm-hmm.
all kind of this mishmash of colors, and like you say, and all colors are everywhere. So even then that was available, it's kind of like it's going into more and more of my life and my being and my whole how I function in the world. But I've always known that judgment did not work for me. Ever since I was a kid, I've known that judgment did not work. I learned to judge, like we all do, but it's always been strange to me. How can you not see that other side? But I can see that other side. I can see that other side all the time. I
Yeah.
always have been able to move myself in all these different,
Yes.
directions to see
Yeah.
what's going on. So it is a capacity that I think a lot of us have. And then we learn that to survive, which is really a lie, we learn that we have to start judging and start fitting in and putting ourselves in
Yeah.
the right box where we are right. So this is really about, like you say, breaking out of that box and explore what's outside, what is beyond the
Yeah.
borders of that.
Yeah, I can really appreciate too what you're saying. My first master's degree was in cultural anthropology,
Yeah.
and it was sort of this, from the youngest that I can recall, I just always had this fascination with people, and like, wow, people on this planet are just so interesting and weird, and wow, why do they do that, and why do they do that, and not weird from a judgment perspective, but from this sense of awe and wonder, and like, I want to know how everybody does things, just because I'm so curious about it. And that's the first thing that you learn, is about objectivity and what is it, and are you able to actually see the world and what's being created for what it is, and not try to filter it through the individual that
Yeah.
you are. And of course, that's always the big question in anthropology is can any of us ever truly do that? And it's a practice, would be my response to that.
Yeah.
But even just having the sense that we even can look at the world, be in the world from a place where we don't have to constantly be deciding, oh, that's good, that's bad, that hurts, that's dangerous, that's safe, that's beautiful, that is valuable, that, right? But actually just being like, oh, look, that is that, like,
Right.
right? Just
And I would
is.
say just knowing that
Yeah,
you are looking at the world with your own glasses
yeah,
makes a huge difference. So even that's like the start of everything. So I know that I look at the world with glasses of somebody who grew up in Sweden.
mhm,
There's nothing, I'm always going to have like some
yeah,
kind of that in my world. But by knowing that, by being willing to acknowledge
yeah.
that's occurring, I can then actually start to see things
You can
different.
see it.
I
Yeah,
can become aware of, oh, but that's because I'm viewing it through this. Well,
yeah,
what if I looked at it in another way?
yeah,
So it's like the willingness to be aware of where you function and how you function, and then see, okay, but what is really going on here? What is
yeah,
actually occurring? So
yeah.
yeah,
And what a
and that's
huge invitation right now on the planet.
yeah,
Like, I mean, even I guess every day on the planet, and also with current events as they are, and things, people sort of up in arms. There's a lot of fear, right? Especially for the ones they love, right? So it's funny how, again, this comes to, and then what gets created also through the fear, and what could actually change in terms of how this all goes
yeah,
down if we are able to individually on our own play with this notion of, if I didn't have to judge it for right and wrong, if I didn't have to be coming from a place of fear, if I didn't have to buy in to whatever the dominant thinking is or the dominant pressures
Yeah.
are, what could not only I choose and be for me, what also can I offer as a possibility for other people? Not that they have to choose it, but just, sometimes just being what you are, right, offers the possibility for someone else who looks over and says, oh, I didn't even realize I could choose that. Like, okay, I like that better. That feels good.
And it's very true. And then also the other thing that fear creates, which is that you cannot be in your knowing when you're
Mm,
functioning from fear, because fear is an invention and a lie. Therefore, because fear isn't really real, fear is like this panic state where you're telling yourself things that hasn't really occurred yet. Like it's
mm-hmm,
not. So therefore, you actually step out of your knowing. And in this case, like in the midst of so much turmoil in the world,
mm-hmm.
if you didn't function from fear, what would you know?
Yeah,
And that knowing is so essential in turmoil times. So your knowing is instant. It's not based on you reading newspaper or listening to the news or getting the right information. You will get the information required, but your knowing is way more like chunk. Oh, I know I'm going to go there. I know I'm
yeah,
not going to go there. I know this is, I know this is actually something serious that's going on with my body, if that's what it is. Or I know it's just something I don't really have to worry about. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know so much more than you're aware of. So this willingness to not buy into everyone else's fear that you're picking
Mm-hmm,
up, because you probably
mm-hmm,
like perceive all the fear around you all the time, and we
mm-hmm.
tend to make that ours. It's
Yeah,
contagious. Fear is
yeah.
contagious. So if you didn't buy that as real, what would you know? That would really be my biggest question right now. What do you know if you don't
Mm-hmm.
buy the fear or the panic as real? So
Yeah,
it is one of those times where your knowing
yeah.
is a key, really, to know where to go and how to function.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we're talking about this, about love, and people talk about self-love, right, all the time. And
Mm.
what I just really get is that in this conversation too, when you do tap into that knowing and you trust that knowing, you follow that knowing, and you've done it, and then you choose it again and you choose it again, and then you actually are willing to come from that space more and more often, that actually speaks to when we're saying we want to love ourselves or we're looking for self-love. I think that sort of points to when we actually follow our knowing, we
Yeah.
can have that sense of accessing that space, whatever that space is
Yeah.
that we were pointing at before. And that, I think, is one of the doorways or one of the access points or gateways to actually having that. So that then when you go out in the world, you are from this space of, well, lightness, right? You're shining your light as opposed to
And no
having all
judgment.
these, yeah,
Well, again, no right and wrong, no
yeah,
judgment. That
yeah,
creates fear, which creates
yeah,
knowing, which then creates like um, a sense of acknowledgement for oneself,
yeah.
and then that goes to creation. So it's really like
Yes,
a whole
exactly. It's all
simultaneous thing. Yeah.
part of the same soup. And yeah, what would it take to just tap into those different elements so that we can, well, just period. What would it take
Yeah.
to tap
Yeah.
more into those different elements? So, Katarina, it's been amazing speaking with you today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and all of you watching at home, it's been great to have your energy here as well. And I wonder what ripples this can create in your world and in the world that we share together. Katarina, the best way for people to contact you, find your books, have more of you in their life, how
It's
can they?
easy to find all of it. Just go to Katarina Wallentin. So it's KATARINA WALLENTIN.com. And there you have classes and books and series and all those other things.
Perfect. So we'll put that in the show notes. And is there anything else before we close that you would like to put on the table?
No, really, just after this conversation, I would say I would really trust that you know, like more than ever, just trust that you actually know.
Mm,
So
cool. Thank you so, so much for being here today. And yeah,
thank you.
what would it take? What would it take for us to really tap into more of what is possible beyond the fear and beyond what we've decided is love, and really just have more fun than we ever thought possible with creating, with ourselves, with others
Bye.
on the planet, with everything, with all the stuff. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for watching. Of course, you know, you can do all the likes and the subscribes and all those things. And until next week, I wonder what we'll discover next. So thanks guys for playing. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.